It seems to be the story of a crystalline man fighting a war against the forces of molten lava, but look past the supernatural appearances to find a family torn apart by love. Two brothers, royalty, set against each other by fate and their desire to do what is right for the people whose lives they have been entrusted with. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Crystar. Crystar is a line of action figures produced by Remco in 1982 and a series of comic books produced by Marvel Comics from May of 1983 to February of 1985. Unlike G.I. Joe or Transformers, the comic book wasn't an adaptation of the toy line, it was actually the inspiration for it. When the Demon Lord sends the forces of chaos to destroy the human city of Galax in an attempt to take over the human planet Crystallium, the human king of Crystallium rallies his forces to fight back. Despite his valiant human efforts and his noble human heart, he is killed in battle. Meanwhile, the forces of Order send one of their own to help push back against the darkness overwhelming Crystallium. Bearing the Prisma Crystal, the mighty wizard Odie is able to defeat the Demon Lord's army, holding the forces of chaos at bay for at least a little while longer. But not before the Demon Lord serves up the prophecy of chaos, predicting that one day he, the Demon Lord, will get his revenge by sending another servant of his to create a civil war and burn everything to the ground. I'm paraphrasing, but dude was sincere. In the aftermath of the Chaos War, the Human King's two human sons with perfectly normal Crystallian names, Crystar and Moltar, are left to determine who will reign as the new king. Or maybe they'll lead as two kings. Co-kings? Big picture and day-to-day? Co-bro kings? Two wizards meet with the princes to counsel them on what the path forward should look like. Odie, the good and powerful wizard who helped save Crystallium during the Chaos War, suggests that they lead their people in accordance with the forces of Order. It's risky, sure, but it is the way of the righteous. Zardeth, an evil wizard and agent of the Demon Lord, suggests that the brothers join the forces of chaos, because if they don't, he's going to kill everyone and everything they have ever loved, and isn't your personal sacrifice a small price to pay for the lives of everyone on the planet? I'm paraphrasing, but dude was sincere. The brothers naturally choose opposite sides. Crystar, the good prince, picks Odie and the forces of Order. Moltar, the I'm tired of constantly being compared and failing in the shadow of my brother Crystar prince, picks Zardeth, believing it noble to guarantee the safety of so many others right off the bat, and not for nothing, but maybe Crystar isn't always right. A fight ensues and Moltar mortally wounds both Crystar and their uncle, Feldspar. Moltar leads his friends to relinquish their humanity at the Fountain of Fire and join Zardeth as lava people. Odie pulls one more magical card out of his robe using a Prisma Crystal method to save the dying Crystar's body. Crystar is reborn as the Crystal Warrior Crystar, and just in time too. Moltar is on his way back to Galax with his gang of lava goulins, so a bunch of Crystar's friends are transformed into additional crystal warriors, and so the war begins anew. Order versus chaos, crystal versus lava, brother versus brother. In the late 70s and early 80s, comic book adaptations of licensed properties, including films and toy lines, were already a regular thing. Marvel was producing comics based on or inspired by Star Wars, Conan, Battlestar Galactica, Shogun Warriors, ROM, and Micronauts, among others. There was a formula Marvel would duplicate to varying degrees of success over the next decade, particularly with Hasbro. 1. License the toy brand. 2. Develop or adapt the mythology. 3. Profit. Crystar was an attempt to turn that marketing relationship around so Marvel could license out more original toy concepts. Crystar was written by Joe Duffy and penciled by Brett Blevins, but they weren't the only creators involved in the development of the title and characters. As Joe Duffy stated in Marvel Age issue number 1, quote, "There was a strong feeling editorially, and I think in the sales department as well, that Marvel ought to be doing some kind of fantasy book besides the sword and sorcery type material it's been doing," end quote. From there, writers Mark Grunwald and Ralph Macchio, not that Ralph Macchio, and artist John Romita Jr. came up with the core concepts and basic visual design. Editor-in-chief Jim Shooter and Doug Palumbaum, part of the Marvel licensing department, helped refine everything from the business end. Duffy and Blevins honed the details and brought the skeleton concepts to life. Inspiration for Crystar could have come from Marvel's own Martin X, a crystalline member of the original Guardians of the Galaxy who made his first appearance in 1969, or perhaps the evil volcano god Shemanan, as seen in issue 19 of Marvel's own Cull the Destroyer in 1977, or heck, Marvel published an adaptation of the Dark Crystal movie in 1982, so maybe everyone just had crystals on the brain. Shemanan? Is that how you pronounce that? Despite their relationships with prominent toy manufacturers like Hasbro and Kenner, the company that answered the call of Crystar was Remco. Remco had been around since the 1940s. In 1971, they declared bankruptcy, and in 1974 were acquired by another toy company called Azrak Hamway. Azrak Hamway continued to use the Remco branding and in 1975 continued licensing pop culture properties. Toys from Star Trek, Spider-Man, Hulk, Kiss, Mickey Mouse, and Universal Monsters would all hit shelves between 1975 and 1981. In 1982, the same year Crystar was released, Remco produced action figures for DC Comics properties World of Warlord and Sergeant Rock. Despite those licenses, Remco wasn't even close to being on the same level as Kenner, Hasbro, Mattel, or even Mego.
Saga of Crystar, a fantasy world of crystal warriors, demons, and wizards. Good wizards like Ogiodi, evil wizards like Zardeth, and underworld demons like Moltar.
They've captured Ogiodi!
Each figure with a crystal prism that makes everything look like this.
Goodness and right, evil and might, the winner is out to you!
The Saga of Crystar collection. Each figure sold separately by Remco.
In 1982, months before the Crystar comics were even announced, Remco released 7 core figures, multiple accessory sets, 2 Shatterpults, 2 dragons, and even a full Crystal Castle playset. Roughly 4 inches in scale, they were small enough to allow for complementary vehicles and playsets the way other successful toy lines like Star Wars were already doing. Crystar figures featured more articulation than Star Wars, but not as much as Hasbro's G.I. Joe, and their play gimmicks centered around the visual aesthetics of the good and evil characters. Sweet, sweet translucent plastic for the good guys, and lumpy unpainted orange and red lava plastic for the bad guys. Some figures had cloth goods outfits, and nearly every figure came with a Prisma crystal accessory that allowed you to see the world through a crystalline lens. Some pieces would later be reused and included with other Remco toy lines like Lost World of Warlord. To achieve perfect market synergy, Marvel Comics published a 48-page supersized Saga of Crystar premiere issue in May of 1983. It would run monthly starting in July of 1983 for 11 issues through February of 1985 and feature multiple attempts to salvage the floundering book. Attempts which included guest star appearance by Doctor Strange in issue 3, Nightcrawler from the X-Men in issue 6, and Alpha Flight in issue 11. While they were attempts to save the underperforming book, appearances by prominent Marvel characters served to illustrate that the Saga of Crystar was taking place within reach of the Marvel mainline continuity, even if it was a pocket, alternate, or parallel dimension. Marvel supported Crystar with coloring books, activity books. Crystar was licensed out for stickers, both puffy and regular, but the biggest reason Crystar underperformed was the lack of the most prominent arm of the marketing strategy. In 1983, there were plans to develop an animated series. After the success of other toy properties like Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe, animation was pretty much a given. It was the #1 tool to drive sales. Ultimately, the only animation produced was featured in the commercials for the toys themselves, which felt like an attempt to tease out a possible animated series, the way Marvel had previously done in commercials for their G.I. Joe comic books throughout 1982, but it never materialized, and both the toy line and comic book were canceled. It would be a long time before the world had another glimpse of Crystar. In 2007, Crystar showed up in an episode of Robot Chicken called Ban on the Fun, wherein it is implied that Crystar has some connection to and or may be made out of crystal meth. At the very least, the drug users he meets smash him into 1,000 pieces and try smoking him. In 2009, a deceased Crystar appeared on a Marvel Zombies variant 80s tribute cover with other Marvel characters from the 80s. Crystar is missing a leg and acting as a backup dancer to Dazzler's Michael Jackson a la Thriller. But the most important development was the 2015 Secret Wars crossover that saw a piecemeal planet formed from realms across time and space, salvaged by the all-powerful God Emperor Dr. Doom after the complete destruction of every version of the Marvel Universe. But don't worry, we're in the future, and the Marvel Universe is fine now. One of the realms included was called Weird World. Part of Weird World was a fragment of Crystallium itself. In issue number 2 of Weird World, we join Warbow, Crystal's man-at-arms, as One of the realms included was called Weird World. Part of Weird World was a fragment of Crystallium itself. In issue number 2 of Weird World, we join Warbo, Crystar's man-at-arms, as he journeys to free the imprisoned Crystar. Hey, you know what we didn't do before this? A read-through. When Warbo finds him, Crystar has been reduced to a literal bag of crystal shards, probably not because of the incident in Robot Chicken, but when you put it all in order like this, it's hard not to notice how well the timeline works together. Warbo is happy enough just to have the bag of shattered bits, but eventually Crystar is restored to his original form, minus an arm, and they all join forces to fight the evil Witch Queen LaFay and the army of Molten Men. In 2016, Crystar and his friends are last seen helping Squadron Supreme fight back against the forces of Dr. Druid. Their battle results in the potential return of disparate entities forthwith to their place of origin or to the next convenient parallel dimension. Crystar may still be alive today. The Weird World comic and Secret Wars event produced a set of HeroClix themed to the events in the narrative. Crystar, Warbo, and Moltar are once again rendered in translucent or lava-encrusted plastic wonder, only much, much smaller. As of this video, there are no big plans for a line-wide reboot, a blockbuster summer event, or an appearance in the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After the development and release of a game bearing the same title but pronounced Crystar in 2018 for the PS4, one has to wonder if Marvel even retains the rights to produce anything Crystar related at all. The real lasting legacy of Crystar has nothing to do with Crystar at all. It is in fact the highest profile exposure the brand ever received, and yet Marvel has never been credited or compensated for it. Glenn Danzig, the singer, songwriter, and all-around frontman of multiple bands over the years, began using a stark white horned skull image on his stage decoration and merch for his band Samhain. He continued to use it and modify it for pretty much anything as if it were an original creation, which fans assumed it was. It's so iconic it's known as the Danzig skull. But the reality is that the skull was a creation of Crystar issue 8 cover artist Michael Golden. The Danzig skull is not an homage, it's not a tribute, it's just a straight copy. Something that you would expect of an indie band, someone who either couldn't afford original art or was trying to make a statement with stolen corporate iconography. Glenn Danzig is on record as being a big-time, long-time comic book fan, and yet, when given the opportunity, never admits that the art is swiped from Marvel's Crystar, swiped from Michael Golden. Golden is still working, still drawing, and will occasionally sign the album art or other items bearing the skull, but admits that he too is surprised that Marvel never took legal action to prevent the use of the image or seek proper compensation. Crystar was born into a world of fierce competition on all sides, a glut of fantasy properties, a glut of toy properties, and despite the intent to develop it as a toy property, lacked the full execution of a proper action figure market saturation program necessary to survive in the era when action figure icons like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Star Wars, and Masters of the Universe reigned supreme. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you haven't heard, we started a second channel called Toy Galaxy 2, that's TOO. Head over there and subscribe for stuff we don't post here. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy or become a YouTube channel member. Please share this video and let us know in the comments down below if you're Team OG-OD and the Forces of Order or Team Zardath and the Lords of Chaos. I want to say OG-OD and the good guys, but I'm guessing that Zardath has all the badass skull art used without permission of the corporate owners. Way better t-shirts than whatever OG-OD is selling. Live, laugh, love.